Okay, time to take a look at what's grabbing headlines around the world. And Florence Villeminot is back in the studio with me. Hello, Flo. Lots of focus on the situation in Syria, of course. The city of Aleppo has come under heavy aerial bombardment since the end of that ceasefire 2 weeks ago.
That's right. Le Monde reports that while negotiations have started again in the United Nations, the United States has said that it's suspending ties with Russia. This is, of course, a top story today. Washington says that it's given up all hope of restoring any kind of ceasefire and blames Russia and Syrian government forces for intensifying their attacks against civilians, including hospitals. And you can see here the aftermath of an attack in Aleppo. This was back in September.
Okay, well, it's a different story if you look at the Russian press.
That's right. There's a very interesting piece today in the Rossiyskaya Gazeta. You can actually see it here in Courrier International. Now, this is the government daily. You can see they're exploring the degré zéro de la confiance, the 0 degree of trust that exists between Russia and the U.S. It's a really interesting article that says that, in the last 5 years, what started off as a popular uprising, the Arab Spring, has turned into an indirect conflict between these two huge military powers, the U.S. And Russia. And you can see the article goes along with this cartoon here. This is a cartoon by the Lebanese cartoonist Bleibal about Syria. You can see the two steps here. You have, first of all, a scenario where the U.S. and Russia are shaking hands. There's one noose. And then there's that other scenario where they're not getting along so well. They're just touching fingers. 2 nooses. So you can see the situation is worse when they're not getting along. But regardless, what's happening underneath there, those, of course, are Syrian civilians. It seems like all this diplomatic tension is way above their head, and no matter what the situation is, they're in a terrible situation. And there's another interesting cartoon today. This is in a Sharq al-Awsat. That's a pan-Arab paper based in London. What you can see here is the Syrian, is essentially this Syria, the Syrian uprising, and that knife in its back. What that knife represents is the international community. So you can see here, very harsh criticism.
Indeed. Well, let's stay with the situation in Syria. The Daily Beast paying tribute to the volunteer rescue workers known as the White Helmets.
That's right. Very interesting, moving piece today in the Daily Beast talking about the White Helmets, the lifesavers Putin calls terrorists. Now, they've been nominated for the 2016 Nobel Peace Prize, which will be announced on Friday, along with a long list of people, a record number. In fact, you can read about that in The Guardian. There are 376 candidates. We're talking about 228 individuals, 148 organizations. Now, among them, you have Pope Francis, and also, you can see a photo of them here, Greek islanders. They've also been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize because, of course, they've been at the front line of the biggest refugee crisis in recent memory. And so you can see The Guardian here focusing on some of those candidates.
Okay. Well, also on the list, Colombia's President Juan Manuel Santos and Timochenko, the leader of the FARC rebel group. Papers around the world are still reeling from those shock results of Sunday's referendum on the peace deal.
That's right. That referendum definitely probably killed their hopes of getting the Nobel Peace Prize. But that story is, of course, getting a lot of attention in Colombia. I pulled out just a cartoon from El Tiempo. What you can see here is this peace dove on the cross there, quoting what Jesus allegedly said while on the cross, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." Now, we're talking about a thin, razor-thin majority of Colombians that rejected this peace deal.
Votes, something like
exactly. Teeny little majority. It's getting a lot of attention. Stunned people in Colombia. It also stunned a lot of people outside of Colombia. You can see here, LUPS, they have a really interesting article. They say, it's so hard to end a war. What happened on Sunday is sad proof of that. Now, those that rejected the referendum say that without justice, peace is not acceptable. But LUPS says they run the risk of having neither justice nor peace. And there's another interesting editorial today in the Wall Street Journal that says that actually, no, this isn't actually about rejecting peace. This is about rejecting a president who didn't keep his promises. There's a lesson here about political leadership and public trust.
Okay. Well, let's move on to Morocco now. The country is holding legislative elections this Friday.
That's right. And the participation rate is going to be the crucial issue in this election that's going to be held on Friday. You can read more about that in 360. That's a an information site that's in Morocco, a high abstention rate would confirm a loss of interest in politics for a majority of Moroccans, according to this article, which quotes a political scientist, Mustafa Shimi, who says that a high abstention rate could actually benefit the Islamist majority party, the Justice and Development Party. They're an electorate that are seen as being disciplined and motivated. Now, another interesting thing about this election that was quite new in Morocco is the role that the internet, technology, and social media have been playing. I pulled a cartoon out of Hespres. It's another Moroccan publication. It's a little bit weird, I must admit, but what you can see here is a candidate represented by a USB port there, talking to these voters who are obviously going to receive information from this cord. And so I guess what they're trying to point out is just what a role internet technology are playing in how people vote in these kind of elections.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Flo. Florence Villeminot there with the International Press Review.